Okay, well, thank everybody for being here with us today. Tonight is the Law Student Discussion Group program focusing on bankruptcy. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jonathan Guess. I am the membership coordinator and database admin here at the KBA, as well as the Law Student Staff Liaison. Today, well, I'm not sure where Mary is. We had Mary Miller, who is a long-standing attorney in the Knoxville area. She's great, but she might be having some issues or something. But if she shows up, we will obviously let her in and speak with her. Oh, it might be her right there. We'll see. Sorry for the pause. We'll see if this is Mary. Okay, well, we'll keep going. We also have Courtney Walker. She has recently started at Gentry in Macklemore. Courtney got her law degree from LMU Duncan School of Law and was licensed in 2018. I know, Courtney, you said that you're not dabbling in bankruptcy as much anymore, but you have a lot of experience in it from the beginning of your career. So hopefully you have some good advice here for the students. Those of you that are here, this is a very informal discussion. Purpose is to just kind of allow you to get a background of what it's like to work within certain areas of practice in Knoxville. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to turn on your mic, jump in if you want to, or if you want to type them into the chat box, that's fine too. Either way, we just want to make sure you guys get all your questions answered. So, Courtney, what I like to do, you said you watched some of these in the past. So what I like to do to start them though is to just kind of give you the floor to describe kind of where your mindset was at when you got to law school, how you started your career, and then just the path that led to where you're at now.
Yeah, so I started law school in 2015, like you said, at LMU. Prior to starting law school, I didn't really know any attorneys. I actually wanted to be a dentist my entire life, an orthodontist. And then I realized that after shadowing an orthodontist that you have to have your hands in people's mouths all day long. And not everyone takes really good care of their teeth. So it's a hard no. I called my parents and said, I'm changing my major, I'm going to law school. And my mom said, I'm glad you finally figured that out. So when I started law school, I really didn't have any direction, and I kind of just took the approach of take classes, and if you figure out it's something you don't want to do, at least then you're moving towards the direction of what you do want to do. And my clerkships and internships in law school I worked in some firms, I clerked for a federal judge, I worked in-house at TVA. I did a little bit of like a Goldilocks approach of trying everything out. And I finally landed at my clerkship my last year of law school, which was at Hodges, Dowdy and Carson, mid-sized firm in town, well-known mid-sized firm in town, with Tom Dickinson, who teaches the bankruptcy class at LMU. I didn't have any experience in bankruptcy, but I started working with Tom as clerking, and I quickly fell in love with it because I'm a very, like you just said, I watch videos to somewhat prepare. So I am a very somewhat fly by the seat of your pants, but I want to be as prepared as possible. And bankruptcy is it's a federal code, so it's very rule based. It's the person who knows the rules the best ultimately is likely to prevail because it's just so rule based. It reminded me a lot of and I said this to a law student last week, it reminded me a lot of civil procedure or rules of evidence. So I started working with Tom, really loved it. And then I started there at Hodges, Dowdy and Carson right after taking the bar exam as an attorney. And so for 3 years, I worked with Tom, who represents a lot of banks and credit unions in town. So my entire practice was bankruptcy related or bankruptcy adjacent prior to moving firms at the end of last year. And now I have less involvement with bankruptcy in the bankruptcy court. I still make a guest appearance for one of our attorneys in the office here. And I still volunteer at the Pro Bono Debt Relief Clinic, which was just 2 weekends ago, and I took a client on from there. But it just, the area itself really appealed to me because it's just so rule oriented, rule based. You know what to expect. It's not as like theatrical as maybe, My Cousin Benny and those typical attorney movies that we see.
or everything on TV with it.
Yeah, it's not as theatrical as on TV.
Yeah, for sure. You spoke to this a little bit before we got going. Just kind of give us the things that you found out about working in bankruptcy that you didn't know beforehand, and what your experience led you to come to believe about the field.
Yeah, so I think beforehand I had the belief that I think a lot of people do that aren't attorneys have, which is like bankruptcy is this big bad thing. Like there's is it from The Office where he's like, I declare bankruptcy, and like you can't declare it. I declare it.
We had a bankruptcy CLE a few years ago, and I literally the graphic I used was him yelling that in our yeah.
So I think that I believe going into it, it's like this big daunting thing, in that you can never recover, and once you've declared bankruptcy, you've just ruined your whole life. It's just simply not true. And I think that's one of the things I enjoyed when I was practicing in it a lot. And now as I represent debtors through the pro bono debt relief clinic, is walking people through that. Like sometimes bankruptcy is the best move that you can make because it only stays on your credit report for relatively a short amount of time. And if you look at it and you think, can I dig myself out of the hole in that amount of time, then maybe, you work on it and you trudge along. But if realistically you can't dig yourself out in that amount of time, then it's good to just have a fresh start. I mean, that's what bankruptcy is for. And we were talking about this beforehand, that, on TV and in movies, or in the media, we hear of like these big companies declaring Chapter 11 bankruptcy, or celebrities, and where it kind of gets a bad name. But the most common bankruptcy are just normal everyday people who end up getting some medical debt that they just can't overcome. And so it's that's what I in addition to like it just not becoming this big life altering, you cannot overcome it event, it's more like normalizing it, that these aren't people who overspend. I mean, maybe some, but like the most of it is just they were in a car accident and they ended up in the hospital. Or, I can use my own family for an example, because my grandmother spent 37 days in the ICU at UT. I cannot imagine what that medical bill is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just people who fell on hard times.
Yeah. Other areas of practice I've talked to, they speak to the fact that, like, within criminal law or family law, a lot of the part of the job is to honestly be kind of somewhat of a therapist, somewhat of a person who is at least just an ear to lean on, a person who comforts them in some way. Those are just certain aspects. So as far as bankruptcy goes, would you say that there's a lot of, is just comforting people, educating them about the process, making sure that they know that it's not the end of the world? Can you give students advice towards that, and maybe something they could start working on now to help prepare themselves for that aspect of the practice?
Yeah, I think especially if you represent debtors, and I guess if you represent creditors too, the biggest thing that you can start working on early is just having empathy, and dispelling the preconceived notions that you have about someone who potentially files bankruptcy. I often like have these conversations with people who want to file, and I see that they have a really large amount of credit card debt. And one of the things that you are required to do by federal law is, before you file bankruptcy, you have to go through this credit counseling on the front end, and you have to go through credit counseling at the back end to help people learn how to manage their money if it was just a simple thing of overspending. But I think there's this large push, and I think it's a positive push globally, to recognize that people often don't overspend just because they're bad at managing their money. They overspend because they are going through a really difficult time and they're looking for, some dopamine somewhere. And so
I go on Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of studies that show that coming home to a package, it releases something in us. And so having those conversations, I think having those conversations with clients is really important, just because, you can't just say, well, manage your money, create a budget. Like we all know that, but figuring out why maybe they got themselves in this situation to help them not make it happen in the future.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like Mary is joining us. Mary, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm very good.
We can hear
I had
you.
to take my grandson to soccer. And
No
thank you,
worries.
Jacob Moses, for saving me. So
No worries at all, Mary. Yeah, you're good. We can hear you. I just
okay.
want to make sure are you in a place where you can talk and you're situated and everything?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
go park real quick, and
Cool.
my phone was dying. It's just been a great day. So
No worries. I'll keep talking to Courtney for a minute while you're getting situated, and we'll yeah, no worries at all. Okay, so Courtney, we'll start with you on this one. Where was I? I was about to ask a certain question. Okay, so just I think you can speak to this because you've worked in different areas of law at this point, but what does your day-to-day work life look like? Simple question. And then how does that area of law compare and contrast to other areas?
So my day-to-day, my day-to-day when I was doing bankruptcy every day, or when I said bankruptcy adjacent, so we represented a lot of credit unions and banks, and so I did a lot of the state court work that oftentimes would lead to someone filing bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
But my day-to-day then looked like I would be corresponding with the attorney for the debtor on maybe some issues that we had, depending on the bankruptcy case, traveling to local general sessions courts for things like failure to pay on credit cards or failure to pay on cards or money that is loaned from the bank or credit union. And then, occasionally like going to court and having to argue a motion in front of Judge Block Knight. And that's something that a lot of people don't know is, of course, bankruptcy is a federal statute, so it's in federal court. And our local judge is Judge Suzanne Block Knight, who, in my opinion, is absolutely phenomenal, and not just phenomenal as a judge, but if you are someone who's looking to get into bankruptcy law, she has such a nurturing ability about her and is excited when she sees new attorneys and wants to help as much as possible. Obviously, she is on the bench, but to help guide new attorneys, to encourage them to practice in this area. She's a really fun judge to practice in front of. Now it's very different. So I do a lot of commercial real estate now. So my day starts, depending on when my kids wake up, but my day starts in the office with lots of looking at title opinions and writing objection letters. And my day's a lot more, now my days are a lot more routine. I have kind of a set, when I leave today, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. And since bankruptcy is a little bit more litigation focused, I always thought I knew what I was going to do the next day, but it always changed.
Absolutely, for sure. Mary, did you hear the question? I'll just go ahead and repeat it for you. So what does your day-to-day work life look like, and how does this compare to in contrast to other areas of law?
Well, I think that the thing that I find, and for, I don't know who's here, but for those who are here listening, I've practiced for over 30 years, so I'm an old person. My daughter, Georgia, is a 2L at UT. Some of you may or may not know her. She clearly is not going to do bankruptcy work. She's made that very clear to me. A few things that I find, my day-to-day is very much, a lot of times, so 6 months from now, I can't tell you what will be on my calendar, but it will be really full when we get there. And the other thing is I will spend lots of time on the phone negotiating, lots of time emailing. The other thing I find about bankruptcy is it's very fast paced. So you might be doing a foreclosure. Particularly, I do a lot of creditor work now, but I did do debtor work when I was a young lawyer. You might be doing a foreclosure and then a week later be in bankruptcy, and 2 weeks later having a contested hearing that goes 2 days with appraisers testifying. So it's very fast moving. As a result, we don't do as many depositions. We don't, if you have a really contested case or if you're objecting to discharge. So what I find is the bankruptcy court also, because everybody's coming in, everybody's taking a loss. You know, nobody is going to really come out with a big gain at the end of the day unless you're buying an asset out of bankruptcy. And so what you find happens is there's a lot of negotiation that goes on. I heard Courtney talk about there's lots of rules and there's always rules, but what we also say about bankruptcy is you can always find a case to support your position. It might be out of California, or like one year I had one out of Alaska, because everybody is losing money. A lot of things don't get appealed. And so you don't have a lot of Court of Appeals case law or Supreme Court case law, unless it's a big issue that people run into repeatedly, or it's a big Chapter 11 case. So that's probably a little off in the sense of what my day-to-day is like, but it's a lot of, the other thing about bankruptcy is it's not just bankruptcy. So Courtney will also have to address issues of real property law, secured credit. You may have to deal with issues about FLSA, have they paid for their inventory, can they pay their employees, tax law. And so that's the other thing, is there's the intersection of a lot of different areas of law in bankruptcy court.
For sure, yeah. Okay, so short and sweet question here. So, okay, Courtney, we'll go with you first. So short and sweet here. So I think when you're the juxtaposition of your positions, I know Courtney's working for a law firm, and Mary, I believe you're running your own firm. Is that right, Mary?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And okay, so Courtney, we'll start with you. Just short and sweet. How do you meet billable hours, and what is your pay based on?
How do I meet billable hours and what?
What is your pay based on?
How do I meet billable hours? I think the best thing that helps me is just contemporaneously keeping it. So I have a spreadsheet. I have 2 monitors, the spreadsheets on one, and just tracking everything, writing down everything I do throughout the day. You'd be surprised how many, we bill on the 10th of an hour. So we'd be surprised how many tenths you miss when you don't write it down, or even like write a little blurb and put a 0.1 by it. And before you know it, like those tenths add up. And at my firm, I am a salary employee. So it's not, it's not based on like what I bill or what I bring in for my salary. Of course, future stuff is based on that. But
sure, yeah. Mary, what about you?
Well, to give you some perspective, I started out at High School Donaldson, which merged with Baker Worthington, Baker Donaldson, and I did a lot of bankruptcy there. I don't know what their minimum hour requirement now is, but when I started there, our minimum hour requirement was 1,800 hours. To be honest, to make partner, you had to shoot for 2,000 plus. Okay. And it's very much like what Courtney said. It was a daily, you got to keep up with your time daily. We were notorious for having some partners who didn't. You gotta, and that's kind of how your focus has to be. When I had children, one of the things I would do is, and it's just part of the process, is I might get up and work at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning before they got up, or I would work late after I put them to bed. And that is the hard part. But that would be And now it's different because I'm running my own firm. And so I also have administrative responsibilities that I have to intermix with it. I focus on, I keep my time daily, and I focus on how much time I have running throughout the month as well. Because if I don't bring it in, I don't get paid. So.
Yeah, for sure thing. Mary, do you have any advice for students who may be looking to hang their own shingle from law school, and anything that they can maybe do now to start preparing for that?
I would take a couple of things. I would get in, if you know what area you want to go into. For example, if you want to go into bankruptcy, then try to do an internship with Judge Faulkner. Work with a firm that does bankruptcy work. If you want to do debtor work, understand that doing particularly debtor work is a big investment. You've got to have certain programs. You probably have to have a standalone computer for your debtors that come in. So if you want to go out and hang on your own shoe, one of the firms that does that kind of work, okay, and try to do an internship with Judge Faulkner. If you want to hang your, if you want to do some kind of other kind of work, the same thing. And once you go out on your own, find a mentor, find a good mentor and an advocate who will be there for you. So like a couple of weeks ago, I took a first-year attorney, not in my firm, but just happened to know her, to bankruptcy court with me. We sat for an hour. I explained to her things that were going on, introduced her to Judge Faulkner, that kind of thing. The third thing I would do is I would try to take clinics. So like if you want to do litigation, do advocacy clinic, or do if you want to do transactional, do get some practical hands-on experience. I presume, Courtney, you probably know this, you've been there sooner. If they have any management type classes that would help you, I would take some of those in the sense of learning about billing. Do I need a document management program? Do I need a separate billing program? Those kind of things. Go to one of the seminars about trust accounts, because that is one of the big issues that people get caught on and can easily get disbarred. If you want to do bankruptcy work, I would, particularly debtor work, I almost would say go work with somebody who does it before going out on your own, just because it is so specialized. That would be my advice.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I appreciate that. Some of the things you spoke on was a perfect segue into my next question, so I appreciate that. So we'll start with Courtney though. So Courtney, students are always encouraged to seek out mentoring relationships. What kinds of things were you looking for in your current mentors, and what steps did you take while in law school to foster and build those relationships?
So what things am I looking for in my current mentors?
Or just what you were doing in law school, how you got kind of in, I know you're pretty integrated into the legal community at this point, because I know you personally, but just the things you were doing, the things you did to help foster relationships and maintain them. Yeah.
I think that, it's putting a lot of pressure on law students, because it's like, you absolutely need the grades. So study, but you also need to be super well connected, and you also need to drink enough water, and you need to sleep, and you need to bathe, and you need to do all the things. And don't forget about those friends that you have. But it's unfortunately just part of it. And I think one of the best things that you can do is just get involved as possible. And just by way of example, I joined the Knoxville Bar Association and the barristers first semester of law school. my now husband and another one of my friends made a pact that we were going to go to every meeting together. And I think a lot of people and barristers don't actually even know when I graduated because I've just been going for so long. But I also joined ETLAW, East Tennessee Law Association for Women, and they had a mentorship program at that time. And my mentor, my first year of law school, was Katie Goodner, Katie Sanford Goodner. And I've kept in touch with Katie. So this is 2015, kept in touch with Katie throughout the years. We have a lot in common. And her brother works at the firm that I work at now. And Katie was my connection to this firm. So from 2015 to 2021, when I joined Gentry Tipton and Macklemore, Katie Sanford Goodner is the sister of Bo Sanford, and Bo is who I work with directly. So having connections and relationships and meaningful relationships in Knoxville, if you're planning on staying in Knoxville, is one of the most important things that you can do. And the easiest way is just sign up. I mean, just sign up and go and be awkward and uncomfortable. And you can stand next to me because I'm always awkward and uncomfortable. But it's like last week we had the Forging Justice event for Legal Aid of East Tennessee, and it felt like the entire Knoxville bar was there, tons of students. And it's a great way to make connections. And I told some students this at the last pro bono clinic that I was at, that I signed up for all the pro bono clinics right out of law school just to get experience. I mean, it was a great way to learn some things, but even more, the range of attorneys that show up to the clinics, it's like, Tom Dickinson, who has tons of experience, and then you have law students. And the more you show up for those type of things and talk to attorneys, then Tom, who Hodges, Dowdy and Carson, they pay for Google services and all that stuff to put them at the top of the list, like every law firm does. And Tom has a great reputation. Someone calls Tom and says, I need your help. And he's like, I don't have time, but I do know an attorney that I've been talking to at the clinics who might. And I got a ton of referrals. I still get a ton of referrals just from connections made at something like a pro bono clinic. And that's not to say that's why you should go, but it definitely is a way to benefit from that and to make those meaningful connections. So, at the end of the day, you have to just decide, like, you can't juggle all the balls, but maybe you can miss out on some sleep here and there, I guess.
Mary, what about you?
I'm not sure I have a lot to add to that. I went to law school at Emory and probably was pretty lousy at, to be honest, fostering mentorships during law school, and came here cold. The advice I would give the law students here is Knoxville is a very social town, and I often tell people it's insular. And so those connections are important. What is great about the bankruptcy bar is it's a pretty small bar. And right now it really is small. So if you choose to do bankruptcy, getting involved in the KBA and ETLAW and organizations like that will give you connections. And bankruptcy work is often referred. It's attorney referred. And so that to me is an important way for you to establish connections in the community and develop business. I think, and it's, Courtney really hit on it. It's hard. I think it's so much harder for y'all now than it was for us, even when we were in law school, as I sit there and watch my daughter. But I think it's important that you take that time and try to foster relationships, because from what I've seen just in the last year, watching her more than anything, is if you're not in the top 10% of the class, sometimes those relationships help get you in the door. So I think it is worth the time to do that. And I think KBA is one of the best places to do it, to be honest. I discovered it late, but it's been a great opportunity for me to meet people, connect, and network. So
great, yeah. I appreciate the plugs. If I can shamelessly plug a couple of other things that we have going. There's a program or a resource we have on the website as a student member you can use called Mentor for the Moment. I know attorneys use it, but students can also use it. We're trying to get that information out. There's a little button at the top that says Mentor for the Moment. You can click it and search areas of practice. It pulls up a list of all the attorneys that are members of ours that have agreed to be part of the program. So they're essentially saying they're willing and able to help you with whatever questions you have, or if you just want to come shadow or anything like that. I know students have had stuff go through that. We also have the diversity and inclusion event we have every October that we purposefully match you up with an attorney that'll be your buddy mentor. And I know I've to this day I've been here for 4 or 5 years now, and I know of quite a few students who still have mentors that came out of that program. So there's a couple of resources there to help you guys network if you need it. So. Okay, a little shifting gears here. So you both have spoken already about the fact that I know both of you personally, you're both your mothers, you're very involved with your families, you prioritize that over everything. So I can't really think of two better people to really talk about this point. So we'll start with Courtney here. So being in a field that seems so serious and chaotic, do you feel that you have a pretty good work-life balance? And what tips would you have for students who are worried about that aspect of practicing law?
I do feel like I have a good work-life balance. So I have a 6-year-old and a 17-month-old. And I'll just tell you, as I said at the beginning, I came into law school, didn't know a lot of attorneys, and Rachel Hurt spoke on a panel my first semester of law school. And she told a story about how she was hours after having her first child via C-section. And I mean, I say hours, she depicted as moments. And she checked her email and responded to an email, and she had not even recovered from delivering her first child. And I was like, what have I gotten myself into? This is not the life I want for myself. And I kid you not, on September 22nd of 2020, I was less than 2 hours after having my son. And what do you know? I checked my email just out of habit. I mean, they took him away to give him some shots and do some stuff. And I was like, well, might as well see what's going on at work.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult to create very clear boundaries. And I think the best thing that you can do is just set those boundaries and maybe even start working on it now. Like if you don't already, you should have at least half a day or a full day or whatever a week that you don't work on law school stuff. That you say, mine was Sunday mornings, Sunday until lunch, not working on anything for law school. I have to prepare the whole week as if I'm not doing anything on Sunday mornings, but you have to give yourself time, because if not, just like anything, you are going to burn out. So thankfully, I'm at a firm that really understands that. They understand that my kids can't drive themselves to school, and they also can't pick themselves up. So I've had plenty of situations like Mary where I've had to take barristers meetings in my car on the way to go pick someone up, and like it's just life, and you just have to roll with it. And I think if you find a good firm or a good fit and you work really hard, people are genuinely understanding of just like life happens. But I mean, my biggest advice is like setting clear boundaries, and that might mean I sit across the table every morning from my husband somewhere between 4 and 5 o'clock, because we have to get a few hours of work in before kids get up at 6:30 and get out the door. So, and that's what, Mary said earlier, it might mean going home and doing work later after they go to bed, but it is absolutely possible to have the family, or if you don't want a family, the outside life that you want and a career.
Sure, yeah. Mary, what about you?
I'm not the person to ask this question to, because I have horrible work-life balance and horrible boundaries, and Judge Bucknight and my daughter and everyone will tell y'all that. So I think our generation, I'm 61, I think our generation has a different perspective on that. And honestly, I think your generation the younger generation, you guys in law school, are more healthy about it. And the biggest thing I would say is create boundaries, take weekends off, try to create work-life balance. I will tell you, I worked till 9 o'clock the day before both of my children were born. I was in the Bristol City Council doing a hearing on a zoning ordinance 2 weeks after my son was born. And so it's just something I have not done well. Now, what I will tell you is the benefit that I got out of the failure to have work-life balance is that all my clients know my kids. They do things for my kids. They understand when I'm gone, I'm caught talking to them from the soccer field or at the basketball game. My clients also are loyal to me though, because they know if they call and they need something, I'll get it done. So it's a double-edged sword, I have to say. What I've seen that makes it so hard is technology. When I first started, we were laughing because my secretaries were cleaning out some files, and she says, "What are those files?" And I said, "Well, when I first started, we didn't have space on our computers to be able to save memos. And so I had form files, research files, and I feel like an antique, and everything now we save on the system and we PDF, and I know how to do it. But technology has made it so that our clients expect to be able to get us anytime, and that we should respond anytime. And so if I can say anything to y'all, I think being able to set those boundaries, just turn the phone off. Maybe you have a separate phone for your office. Turn your email off. Don't respond to it. But if you can train yourself to set those boundaries now, you'll be a lot healthier in the long run.
Sure.
And Jonathan, I have
go ahead.
just a small thing to add. One of the things that I have found to be helpful, and as someone who's trying to manage all this stuff as an associate, and I work for a lot of partners, so you're managing, the deadlines and stuff. Well, partners is when someone says, and this is a really great practice, and I think it's the segue between, the absolute, I'm not working on any weekend and I've got just these clear boundaries, and then the yes man, like the segue is just expectations and setting expectations for everyone. So if someone has an emergency project or something and they need your help, and you can say, it's saying, I would love to help you. Here's what I have on my plate. If it is an emergency, I will go discuss all of these other things with the other partners to see if there's something that I can adjust. Like, is this Friday a hard deadline for this partner on this thing? Or knowing if they know that you have a hard deadline, can I push theirs to next week? And if you're in a firm where everyone's supposed to be working together and stuff, I always find people are like, oh yeah, don't worry about that. Take care of it next week. But if you have that conversation, but if you don't, then you're just late. So setting expectations and being overly communicative and not relying on someone else to do it, I think has been really helpful.
And one of the things that I found when I was at Baker was I would bounce that back on the partners sometimes. So if somebody came in and said, I've really got to have this filed tomorrow, I'd say, hey, so-and-so's got me working on this. Can you talk to them and y'all decide which is the priority? Then you are out of the middle of it.
Yeah.
So, but communication is huge. That is, if what I do a thing every year for Maryville High School, and that's one of the things I tell them always is learn how to communicate. Go in and talk, not just email, not just text, talk to and communicate. That is huge. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, okay, so this was one of the student submitted questions that they could submit through the registration process. I don't know if either of you can speak to this, but I'm going to just throw it at you and see what you got. So, Courtney, we'll start with you. So do you juggle classes while working as an intern before finishing law school? And if so, can you describe that?
Yeah, so at LMU, you are not allowed to work your first year of law school. I'm not sure if that's the rule at every law school. But then I had to work every semester. Then I my husband at the time, it was not my husband at the time. He said, just wait till we get in the real world. Law school is easy. And I was like, no, it's not. Law school is so hard. Now I'm like, law school's so easy. Because I didn't have 2 kids then, and I didn't have a house. Like, it was just me worried about, did I have clean clothes and am I fed? And so it was a lot easier. And I think setting, like I mentioned before, like setting those boundaries, I knew that I was not going to work on anything law school related on Sunday morning until lunch. I usually would have lunch with my parents, and then I would go to work or do whatever afterwards, just give myself a breather. Then that meant like the whole week I was preparing as if I didn't have Sunday morning. So I managed my time better. And I think, like, it's, how did I manage it? It was just like managing time and not wasting time. I worked all throughout law school, and I found it manageable.
Sure, yeah. Mary, are you? It looks like you're driving now, so I don't.
Yeah, I'm getting ready. I'll be okay to talk. You may not be able to see me.
Yeah, no worries.
About that. It's just that and I may drop you because the soccer field doesn't have great coverage. So,
no worries at all. Yeah, no, if you have to go too, don't worry about it. It's all good.
No,
we appreciate you being here.
It's okay. I worked through law school in Atlanta, and it was always a juggle. And it probably my inability to set boundaries started then. But I will say my bosses were good, and what I tell the clerks that work with me, like some of you may know, Jonathan Williams works with me now. I always tell my clerks, your exams, school comes first, and so you got to keep that first and foremost. But it was a juggle, and I don't know that I have great wisdom about how to juggle it. So I think you've got to make sure and figure out, okay, how many hours can I do? I think in every week you've got to assess it. And again, communication.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't work that week, you need to let them know, and you need to let them know ahead of time. So.
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions here. Corey and Jacob, if you guys have anything you want to specifically have them address, free to type it into the chat box or jump in here. So, okay, so let's see. So I don't know if either of you can speak to this either, but I know that there's reputations for practicing in certain cities. So I'm hoping you can maybe have a little bit of insight here. So if you can speak to this, how does practicing law in Knoxville compare or differ to practicing in other large cities such as Nashville, Atlanta, Memphis, so on and so forth? We'll start with you.
Well, I have only practiced in Knoxville, as far as like the large cities. So I've visited courts and other, my job at Hodges Dowdy & Carson, I essentially appeared in every general sessions court in East Tennessee at one point and another. Throughout the course of 3 months, we had like a rotation. So I practiced in other cities, but they're mostly smaller, like, Loudon, Union, and Knoxville's the only metropolitan area that I practiced in. I can't imagine the bar association in other cities being as collegial as our bar is, but maybe that's just because I'm very biased and have no other evidence to support that.
Yeah. Well, Mary, you have anything to add to that? I don't know if you might be in that bad zone of bad signal.
Hey, Jonathan, I think Can you hear me? Or am
Yeah,
I
you're
still-
there now. You're kind of going in and out, but yeah, you're there for now. No, you cut back out again. All right. You're probably in some bad signal, Mary, so we can move on, no worries. All right, so let me see here. Okay, so Courtney, so short and sweet here. What is the most rewarding part of your law practice?
The most rewarding part of my law practice, I think, is and this is going to sound very cliche, but like the honor of just being an attorney. And I don't practice a lot with the Constitution, but it's one of my favorite things in the entire world. And I can totally nerd out if you want to go grab an IPA and we can discuss. But I just think about like what exactly our profession is, and specifically related to this discussion about bankruptcy. You have the power and tools as an attorney, and if you're practicing bankruptcy, to help someone during the most difficult part of their life, or help someone save their family farm or their home or their business that they're the fourth generation. I mean, you have the ability to help people in a way that's super meaningful to them. And it always, if someone is in bankruptcy, it is likely not a good day. And so we have that, we have that knowledge and the power and tools. And if you watched Olivia Pope in Scandal, she says gladiators in suits. And more often than not, I really do feel that way. Being an attorney is a really noble profession. And I really am honored to practice law.
Mary, are you there? Yeah, I think Mary's signal too bad. So, all right. So a couple more, Courtney, and we will get out of here. Another student submitted question. So what was the job search?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little better now.
Okay.
You're not a little better. Sorry, Mary. Okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna mute her. Sorry, Mary. Oh, technology. This is another fun thing about practicing law.
For me, about no. Is that any better? No.
You're okay now. I don't know if we didn't really hear anything you just said, unfortunately. Yeah, I think she's okay. Courtney, so we'll get back to you. So,
Okay.
what was the job search process like, and when, as a 3L, should I start to send out my resume? Before the bar, after the bar, etc.?
I would definitely say before the bar. So the job process for me was a little interesting because I kind of dominoed between multiple clerks and internships and stuff. And ultimately my last clerkship was at Hodges Dowdy and Carson, and then I received a job offer from there. I would definitely think start sending before the bar. And the biggest resource that every student has is their career service department. And the resources in your law school. Everyone at your law school is really connected to the legal community, and they might not, they might know someone who is looking for a position or looking for a clerk of some sort who can help open a door. But ultimately, I think that you're sending out resumes, but then, like Mary said earlier, if you're not in the top 10% of your class, connections can help tremendously, because like top 10% is great, but there can only be a top 10%, and some people just are better at taking tests than others. But that doesn't mean that there's necessarily going to be like the best attorney or the most fun to work with. And those things are really important, and that's where you can really shine, is when you have connections through like your personality and stuff, and that can help the door open. But I definitely would say start applying and sending out resumes before the bar.
Sure thing, yeah. Mary, I don't know if you look like you're in a better spot now. You're also muted. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Can me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay, I'll just stand right here and I will not move. I sent out a ton of resumes. I interviewed on campus 3rd year. So I was one of those kids, and I tell all my clerks this. I was one of those people who was only top 50% out of my 1st year. But by the time my 3rd year, I had worked hard and I got to the top 10%. I sent out a ton of resumes.
Oh man, it was so good for a while. Oh, man.
She has great things to say, I know.
Yeah, I know. Oh man, I can't even mute her. It's not even letting me. Oh well.
I interviewed actually on and so by the time like 6 or 7 offers to choose. You can't hear. I'm sorry, Jonathan.
Okay. Yeah, it's just lagging behind there. So okay, so I like to ask this question as the last question. We're about done here. So I don't know if you don't have anything, it's not a bad thing at all. It's kind of a dumb question. I just like to throw it out, and sometimes we get some really interesting answers. So Courtney, what do you see as the quote next big development in bankruptcy law?
The next big development in bankruptcy law. Well, I hope that the next big development, but I don't have a lot of hope, is some restructuring of student loans. It's very hard to get your student loans discharged. And as we all sit here with working on our doctorate degree or already have a doctorate degree, we have a lot of student loans. And I think about, and I had this discussion as an associate, where early on my one of the partners said, oh, well, I worked the whole summer and I paid for my law school tuition for the whole year because it was $1,700. It's like, one of my books is $1,700. So, and we have the same job, and you think about like the way that houses have inflated and, everything, and maybe salaries haven't kept up with that. So I would hope the big thing that's coming up is a restructuring of the way that we can handle student loans in bankruptcy. I think that'd be really beneficial. Not hopeful. But.
Okay, well, that is all the time we have. Sorry for the technical difficulties there, but I'm glad Mary was able to join us for a little while, even all the craziness going on. And Courtney, thank you, of course, so much for being here. I know you're incredibly busy, and you have to take an hour out of work you can prepare for tomorrow to do this or spend time with your kids. So really appreciate it. If we're going to put this on YouTube as well, if anybody wants to watch this back and use it as a reference or a resource. If anyone has any questions. Courtney, would you mind putting your email in the chat real quick, just in case these guys want to come down real quick? And I would encourage you to write her to email down and reach out. I know Courtney is fantastic and is one of the people that is willing and able to help anybody. So we really appreciate that.
Let me do that real quick. That's one of the things I was going to say earlier is I as an attorney, now looking back on my law school career, people are so willing to help. So like last week, I met someone for coffee who was interviewing with Judge Bachnight this week for an internship. And we just kind of talked about bankruptcy generally. She did get the internship, so that's exciting, not because of meeting with me, but she just kind of wanted to like pick my brain as someone who practices bankruptcy, and so she could be prepared for the interview. And attorneys are always, I found that attorneys in Knoxville are always willing to help if you ask. Yeah,
it couldn't end it a better way than you just did right there, Courtney. Thanks so much, and thank you guys for being here. And Courtney, again, thank you so much. We'll see you later.
Thanks. See you guys.